Hey guys, we are just finishing up the first full week of 2020, and we've had a mixture of cold nights and pretty warm days. And so, as like every winter, the plants around here are thoroughly confused. In this video, we're going to be going through the do's and don'ts of garden planning. I'm going to be taking you through some of the new things that I'm going to be growing this year, a couple of new experiments that I'm going to be trying this year, and then give you a tour around to see how the garden looks now and kind of my plans for the summer. So in my opinion, it is very difficult to find a rule or a system or a plan that fits everyone everywhere. Because actually, it's pretty impossible to come up with a plan for just me. Because things change year to year. There's just so many variables that you cannot control. For instance, in 2018, I grew 8 pepper plants. And out of those 8 pepper plants, I got about 40 or 50 big bell peppers. Red, orange, yellow. It was way too many. And so for 2019, I was actually going to cut the number of plants in half, grow 4 bell pepper plants, couple reds, couple yellows, and then take that extra room and plant some different types of peppers. In fact, I planted about 20 additional plants of different varieties, in addition to the 4 bell pepper plants. I had an outstanding harvest of 3 to 4 bell peppers out of those 4 plants, and out of the other 20 plants, I think I got 5 or 6 for the year. Why the difference? Well, first was something that I could control. The 3 new beds back here, it was the first year growing in those beds, so I wasn't sure about the drainage and all the aspects that go along with an entirely new bed and garden. So that was one thing. The second thing is we had a really cold, really wet winter last year. In fact, all the way through spring and even into June, it was way cooler than it normally is. And if you know anything about pepper plants, they absolutely hate being planted in the cold. And they're either going to sit there and take their time, their growth is going to be stunted, or they'll just die completely, which some of them did do that. Another thing, our bush squash. We had different kinds of bush squash, zucchini types, different summer squash types. And I remember not too many years ago, in fact, probably 4 years ago, one zucchini plant would give me more than enough for our family for the entire summer. But what I've noticed, and this last year was the worst, is that if I did not specifically, personally hand pollinate the flower, I did not get a fruit. Now, not only is there a lack of pollinators, and I have definitely witnessed that, but it just seems like the male flowers and the female flowers were rarely blooming at the same time. And so when there was a female flower and no male flower, no pollination occurs, even with a ton of pollinators. The point of all this is to say that's what keeps gardening interesting. Now, if this year is going to be your first year gardening, expect success, but also expect disappointment. You will be disappointed by one thing or more. But each disappointment is an opportunity to learn. You see, dealing with the pepper failure, I'm changing things up this year. Number one, I'm going to sow the seeds indoors, and I'm going to grow them indoors until I know that it is 100% warm enough outside, soil and air temperature, to be able to bring them outside. With the squash, rather than growing a bunch of different varieties, I'm going to grow 2. I'm going to grow a zucchini and a yellow summer squash, my 2 favorites, and I'm going to grow more than one plant. I'm going to grow several plants of each so that it increases the odds of male and female flowers being open at the same time. And I'm also going to plant more flowers around the vegetable garden to help draw in more pollinators. So if somebody comes to you and offers you a perfect tip that they've used for 100 years on growing the perfect whatever, be open to listening and be open to trying it, but consider it an experiment in your own garden. I try many new things every year, and in a minute I'm going to get into what I'm trying this year, and some of those things work and I keep them around for the following years, and some of them don't, but I don't cry over it. I drop them and I move on to the next thing. And over the years, you're going to develop, through failure, a lot of different successful techniques that work in your own garden that you're going to be able to rely on, at least for the most part. Obviously, we can't control the weather and some other things, but you're going to know what works for you for the majority of the time, and you're going to be able to then have the best garden you can have. But it's going to take some time, and you just got to enjoy the process. It's also fun every year to try and add some new crops that you have never grown before, to see if it's something you might like better than what you've been growing, or something new completely to your dinner plate that you might enjoy. So some things I'm trying this year that are new. Last year I grew successfully, and if you remember back to some of the garden tours, the scarlet runner beans did amazing. I had 2 teepees full of those, and they just produced literally for 4 months or more. So I'm definitely keeping those. Last year I also tried a few of the noodle beans, the really long Japanese type beans, and miserable failure. They were attacked by every bug you could think of. They just had stunted growth, and it was just ridiculous. And that was the second year with that same result. So I'm not going to be growing those this year. Instead, I'm going to be growing another pole bean. It's called Blauhilde, and it's a purple bean, and it's supposed to be pretty similar to the scarlet runner beans. It's going to be purple with nice purple flowers. So that's going to be fun to give that a try. Not sure how much sickness you hear in the background. I'm outside for a reason. Noah and Emily have had the flu for a week, and knock on wood, I have not gotten it yet. So another thing I'm going to try, which is kind of fun. Last year I grew the loofah on a whim, and it turned out to be the most fun thing that I've grown. And so this year I'm going to be growing another gourd. It's actually a birdhouse gourd, completely for fun. There's some practical uses for it as well, and we'll see what I can get into there, but it's just going to be a fun thing to grow. Now, my grandparents are from the South, and they grew, and I grew up eating okra. I love okra. Probably not cooked the most healthy way, but that's okay. And I've never grown it. And in fact, my grandparents used to live in this house years ago, and they grew okra here. Okra does take some pretty good heat in the summer, and we do have that here, not as much as further inland, but we're not by the beach where I grew up. We couldn't grow it there. But here we're about 20 minutes inland, and so you can grow okra here. And so I'm going to try a really pretty okra called Jing Orange. And when you see the plant, it kind of matches the tropical look I've got here, so it can kind of bring some of that tropical look into the vegetable garden. That'll be fun. I'm not giving up on peppers. I know last year was a fluke, and if you watch some of my pepper videos early on last year when I was sowing the seeds and then first planting them out, I was really excited about habanada. It was a heatless habanero pepper. Well, I didn't get one pepper off of those plants. Those were some of the earliest ones I planted, so the first batch actually died, and the second batch, which was in like late April, early May, which generally is fine for anything here, it still wasn't warm enough, and so they just kind of sat there and did nothing, and eventually just petered out. So I'm growing those again. I'm also trying Jimmy Nardello, which looks like a really cool, it's like a long red, I don't think there's much heat to it. It is sweet, but there's a little more heat, I think, than the Havanada. And then one thing that I've heard people talk about for a long time that I've never tried, and it will also bring some of that tropical look to the vegetable garden, is red Malabar spinach. Now, I've tried growing spinach here with very little success because it's a cool season plant. It does not like the heat, but it also likes a lot of sun. And I don't have too much of the same, of both of those things at once. In the winter, when it's cool, most of my garden is in the shade, as you can see. It doesn't get 6 hours of sun. And then when it starts to get sunnier, it'll just sit there all winter. And then when it starts to get sunnier, it'll start to grow. And then before it's really time to harvest it, it gets killed by the heat that comes for the summer. So that really wasn't something I've grown actually for the last several years just because of that reason. But this might be something that's a good substitute. So we'll try it. Again, never had it, never tasted it, never grown it. So it's going to be fun to try it out. So I think what I want to do now is actually just take you around the garden a little bit, show you what we've got going on and what my plans are for the next planting cycle, the summer garden. That'll be here before you know it. Let's go. All right, so these 3 beds here are always the shadiest in the winter. I've got some sweet peas here, and these are ornamental sweet peas. These are not edible. And I've got some cabbage and kohlrabi growing in the front of each of these beds. Sweet peas in the front of each of these beds. Over here, if you remember back to my video on cover crops, this is the crimson clover. And then I've got edible peas growing up these 2 teepees right here. Now in this bed, this is when the video I did several months ago doing the pattern of lettuce. So that's actually come in really nicely. And I think what I'm going to do next winter is actually just fill all these beds in with lettuce like this. So back here in the corner, we have still got loofah, believe it or not. We've got, 4 or 5 still hanging on here. And they're not ripening, so I'm thinking they're going to sit here maybe until the weather warms up. I'm going to let them sit here. I have nothing else to put here right now anyway, so we're going to see what happens with those. As you can see, my oranges are just about ripe enough to pick. And then coming over here, I've actually got some peppers that I'm overwintering that I never got any fruit off of this past year. So I'm just keeping them up here. This is a sunnier area than where they were planted, so I dug them up and put them in these pots here. Now this was the broccoli and cauliflower, and if you remember when I planted this, I was mentioning a product that I was trying out that a company had sent me. Now so far, you guys, I'm not seeing much of a difference. I think, let's see if you can tell. So from here over was with the product, and from here over was not. So they might be a little bit bigger. They might be a little bit bigger. I'm not sure yet. Also, I used it after that. I used it on the middle bunch of sweet peas here. Now they are maybe a tiny bit bigger. I'm going to continue to use it. Now I'll tell you what it is. It's basically ground rice hull. And if it works, great, I'll let you know. But as of right now, I can't tell the difference. And it may not be fair using it in the winter time. I'm going to try it in the summer, and we'll see what happens. Back over here, I don't know if you caught this. My strawberry tower is actually no more. The strawberry tower as a concept worked great. It did exactly what I wanted it to do. No bugs, got the fruit up off the ground. It was great, and they grew well too. The basket itself was starting to be structurally unsound. It started to buckle in the front. And so I took, just a few days ago, I took all the strawberries out of it and put them in the freezer, or not the freezer, put them in the refrigerator, to give them a winter chill so that when I plant them again in something else, which I'm going to be going over, that'll be an upcoming video just in a couple weeks here, they'll have some winter chill on them that they don't typically get in Southern California. All right, now this is the bittersweet part for me. These are my tomato plants, and actually just a week ago I harvested my last harvest of green tomatoes. They weren't ripening, so I went ahead and picked them because it's time to just kind of get these out of here. They're looking a bit sad, although it does make me a bit sad because literally 95% of you I probably met through these specific plants. And so having to take them out, literally I was tearing up a bit the other day. But you know what? It's time to bite the bullet and get rid of them. Now here is what I'm going to be talking about. Oh, this is the garlic. I did a garlic video a few months ago where I planted this first half that were not chilled in the refrigerator first. And then just right around Christmas, I planted this half that were chilled for 6 weeks in the refrigerator. So I'm going to be able to see which does better. All right. Have you guys ever seen one of these? This is a tower garden, and it's a hydroponics system. And I'm going to be planting strawberries. I don't know, do you call it planting when it's hydroponics? It's going to be an organic hydroponic system, so that's going to be the tricky part because there's not a lot of hydroponic solutions that are organic. So I'm actually going to be making my own. And if anybody's interested in organic hydroponics, I'm going to be going through what I'm doing. Anyway, the water is held in this reservoir down here, gets pumped up through the middle, and then it rains down the edges inside where the roots of all the plants will be hanging in. So I've seen people grow strawberries this way before, and it looked like a pretty good way to do it. So I think there's 30 strawberries in here. So I'm going to be putting 30 strawberries in here. And then back here, we've got some lemons coming on to this espalier. They're ripening up. And then I just took all the leaves off of these apple trees, and I cut them back pretty far. I cut them back this way toward the house, farther than I've ever done before, because I'm going to be growing strawberry plants in rain gutters. I've seen people doing that with success and some failures, and I'm going to actually do a video on that to go over the successes and failures so that we can do it right and not have some of the failures that other people have had. But anyway, there's going to be a couple of tiers of them going along in front of the apples. You know, it's all about space saving for me, and I think that's going to give me a lot of crops in a little bit of space. I'm not sure if you can make heads or tails of this, but I always draw out a garden plan. Actually, technically it goes like this. And so this coming summer, in this front bed, I'm going to have half yellow squash, half zucchini. Now these back 3 teepees are going to be beans. So the 2 edge ones are going to be Scarlet Runner, and then that new purple one is going to be in the middle. And then back here in this mess, there's going to be 2 more teepees. One is going to have loofah, and one's going to have some mini pumpkins, and then I'm going to grow Roma tomatoes around the base of them. In the second bed, where the lettuce is, I'm going to have the birdhouse gourd up front, climbing up. In the middle, I'm going to have all my peppers. And then on this teepee back here, well, I already told you, I'm going to have the beans there. And then in the back bed, I'm actually going to be planting flowers up here. They're going to be mandavillas, so it's going to bring more of the tropical look, invite the pollinators in. And then in this back bed, the back side is going to be okra. The front is going to be kale and chard. And then over here, there's going to be a matching mandevilla growing up this one to match the other side of the path. And then lots of flowers along the front. And this front bed here, I'm going to have the garlic that's there, which will be harvested in summer. and then globe onions and green onions. And then in the back, it's going to be all about tomatoes, where they are now, and I'm going to extend this trellis over, and I'm going to be growing cucumbers on this side. I'm going to be having half as many tomatoes as last year, because one of the things I learned last year is I had way too many. So I cut the amount in half. I'm still going to probably have too many if they grow like last year. Now, you might be wondering why I'm growing tomatoes 2 years in a row in the same place. Crop rotation is a lot more important in the ground than it is in raised beds. I would say the top 4 inches of the top 4 inches is generally where the bacteria lies in the raised beds, and it can then splash up on the plants. Number 1, I use drip so we don't have splashback. Number 2, in the spring and the fall, all of my beds get a nice 4-inch layer of new compost. So I've never had an issue, and I know a lot of other people who grow in raised beds, that they don't really have as much of an issue with needing to rotate their crops. I've never had a problem. Knock on wood, we'll see. But again, that takes us right back to the beginning of this video, where you need to know your garden, and you can only know your garden by having experience with it. And that experience comes from success and failure. Look, you see how this whole thing just went full circle? So anyway, I want you guys to join me. If you go back and watch the very last video I did, the Happy New Year video, I talked about having a brand new series coming up next month, or starting next month, and it's going to take us right through A to Z, planning a garden from scratch. So if you're brand new to gardening, or if you might be starting a new garden and want some new tips, this is going to be the series for you. So definitely make sure you're subscribed, so you will get notifications each time, because that series is probably going to be 5 or 6 episodes, starting from planning the garden to building the raised beds, to what to plant and planting, taking care of it, and then finally the harvest. So thank you guys for joining me. It's great to be back. 2020 is going to be an awesome year. And if you're new to gardening, just know it always gets better. And next year is always going to be better than this year, because you're growing from experience, you're learning, you're implementing those changes and making the adjustments along the way. And look it, you've got this community here. We're here for you every step of the way. Glad to have you guys, and we'll see you in the next video.